Jesus Christ, it's 1 in the morning. I'm making so much noise and I'm so tired. Why there? Hello everyone and welcome back to this amazing episode of things I like to talk about because I have nothing else to talk about and I don't like to talk about things that I don't like. So today we are talking about my country. Today I'm here to talk about Portugal and I'm talking about 10 facts or 10 things about Portugal that you can probably find on the internet or in yet any other video, but it's me talking about them, so I mean that's just it. So to get right into it. So number 10, I will be talking about a bar in the city that I live. The city that I live, which is called Porto, is in the north part of Portugal. It's the second biggest city in Portugal and the best one. But I'm talking about a bar that's named 77. And this is a bar that actually was not that well known in the city. I mean, it was well known, but it was just another bar. Then they made like some major improvements on the bar because they started doing like 50 cents a beer, like a mini, which is like a 20 centiliters beer, and you only had to pay 50 cents, which is ridiculous cheap. So that bar was famous because of that, and then they started selling more and more beer. They just started selling that like it was water. I mean, people were buying one thing of those like every 20 seconds at the bar. They sold 1,200 per day, and I'm happy to say that I actually contributed to that number by buying like, I don't know, probably like 30 beers there. The most amazing fact for me is that this year, 2019, actually last year, this year they made it with 1 million minis sold, man. I mean, how crazy is that? There are probably more countries that sell more, but I mean, it's Portugal. We have like 10 million people and Porto is like 500,000 people. And you have to like take out the children and you have to take out the old people that don't drink. It's many beers, believe me. So Nazeira, or Nazeira as we say in Portugal, is very famous because of big waves, and like McNamara actually surfed one which was 23 meters. But actually that's not the record for the biggest wave surfed in the world. That actually goes to Coxa, which is a Brazilian surfer, and he made it like last year or something like that, and the footage of that is also incredible. It's just like surrealistic. It's just like you think that it's a tsunami coming. No, it's just a bro surfing in a giant ass wave, just chilling it, just like be like, homie, what's up? Like surfs up as nothing on that guy. On to the 8th topic slash fact slash curious thing about Portugal. Yeah, the tiny country that people always think it's a part of Spain, and please tell me that you guys watching this don't think about that or never thought about it, because we are not part of Spain. We are not. We never were, except for the 6 years that we actually were, but that doesn't matter because that was just a stupid move by the kings in Portugal and people in general. Yeah, in 1,500 more or less, we in Spain were like, yo bro, you know, you have loads of lands and we actually have loads of lands, so like, let's just split up the world and just stay like that. So we did. We were cool friends with Spain, and there's a reason why Brazil speaks like Brazilian people speak in Portuguese, and like the rest of South America and Central America speak in Spanish. That's because the line where like the half of the world was the line, it was in Brazil. And actually Portuguese people tried many times to invade the Spanish territory and vice versa, because Portuguese people just wanted the whole continent to themselves, and Spanish as well. Number 7 is a natural disaster that occurred in 1755, which was the earthquake that happened in the 1st of November of that year. And it was a giant earthquake. It was like the biggest earthquake we ever had in Portugal. I think it was 9 on the Richter scale, and it killed tons of people. I think it killed like around 30,000 people, like, or a quarter of a million or something like that. And it burned down almost 90% of like buildings in Lisbon. So that hit Lisbon majorly. Like there was an earthquake, and basically all Lisbon was affected by it. And then like to the north and part and south of Lisbon, there were areas affected, but not as much, of course. But it came almost all the way to Porto, because there was a tsunami right afterwards. Like the earthquake was like, yeah, bitch, you thought that was enough, wasn't it? Nah, here's the tsunami as well. But yeah, there was a disastrous event, because like everything that happened was just like, it was such a bad luck, because it happened on the 1st of November, and that in Portugal is the day of All Saints. So in the day of All Saints, many people go to churches and light up a candle. And actually my brother was born in that day, in the 1st of November, not in 1755, but on that day, so all churches in Lisbon were like full of candles lit up. So the churches just started like getting fires and fires and fires, and everything was on fire, and everything was going down, and everything was being destroyed. So it was pretty bad. And then since like 300,000 people died on the streets, like there was like loads of plagues and loads of diseases going on. So there was this one guy, which was Marquês de Pombal, which was responsible for basically like building up Lisbon again. Like he just like rebuilt all the city. He made sure like the money got into the right places. He took care of the people in the street. Like he just buried everyone, used the money for that firstly, in order to not like spread the disease and so on and so forth. And he built like buildings that were like anti-seismic buildings and so on. So like low buildings that were like very like long, basically, like short and long. Yeah, that's what I mean. So yeah, that was the earthquake. You might have know about some famous Portuguese people, especially footballers like Bernardo Silva, Cristiano Ronaldo, José Mourinho. Man, there are many famous footballers, but there are more famous people in Portugal, or at least they should be more recognized. For example, we have the writer José Saramago, which actually is the only Portuguese ever to win a Nobel Prize in literature in this case. So he won it when we did like this amazing and crazy thing in Portugal, which was the Expo 98. We also have other famous people, for example, Fernando Pessoa, another writer, a poet. Like it was one of like the most badass guys in like the poetry game and so on. There's like two main poets in Portugal, which are Fernando Pessoa, he is from like he was born in like 1905 and died in 1940, I think. I'm not totally sure. But then there was another guy, which was Luís Vaz de Camões, but it was from the time of like discoveries and so on and so forth. But Fernando Pessoa actually had 3 heteronyms. I think that's how you say heteronyms. There are 3 who are very known, which are Alberto Queiro, Ricardo Reis, and Álvaro Campos. And each one of them had their own personal traits. It was a different person and had their own poems. And Fernando Pessoa didn't write at the poems, didn't write Ricardo Reis, and then in the bottom like actually it is Fernando Pessoa. No, it was Ricardo Reis, and it was completely into character. There's like he had sub characters, but there are so many that people don't usually talk about them. I think there was like around 80 people that he masked himself off. Also, other people that you might have heard about, Durão Barroso. He was an ex-leader of like the parliament. I think it was something like the president of the European Union or something like that. And you also probably know about Salvador Sobral. He is the composer of Amar pelos Dois, which was the song that made him win the Eurovision contest, and he was the first Portuguese to win it. ever. So it was quite a big feat at the time. So number 5, I want to talk about the time when Portugal wasn't Portugal yet. This was during the Roman expansion. At the time, they were coming to Spain, and they were like, they came from the Mediterranean Sea and just entered Portugal through Algarve, the south part of it, and Spain as well. And there were people living here, the Lusitans, and people didn't want the Romans to occupy the territory. So there was an army, the Lusitan army, but the Lusitan army was very small because it was just considered from like the people from like Spain and Portugal, and not every people, of course, because not like the entire peninsula was not habitated at the time. So there was like a very small number of people compared to the immense and gigantic Roman Empire. So there was this leader which was called Viriato, and he did a plan in order to like actually win a battle against the Roman Empire. They were coming, and they actually deceived them in order for them to go through like this valley. And while the Roman army was going, they threw like big rocks. They just had, you know, a valley, and they were like on the top of the valley, the Lusitans, and with Viriato commanding them, and just threw like these big bolts of rocks, and the Romans couldn't escape and just died. Viriato was like the leader that managed to hold on the most against the Roman Empire, at least in the Iberic Peninsula. So what happens is the Roman Empire and the Roman leaders started to bribe their men, so Viriato men, and basically his own people, his own army of Viriato actually betrayed him and killed him in his sleep. If it was for Viriato, like probably, I don't know what could happen, he would probably die eventually, but we would have many more stories to tell to our fellow kids in history classes. Another thing I want to talk about is a myth, a story that is from my homeland of Ponte de Lima. It's like even more north than Porto. It's a very small town, it's actually a village. And we have a river there, which is called the River Line, if you translate it. And actually, the name of the city, which is Ponte de Lima, which actually translated to English, it's bridge of lime. But don't worry, we don't have a bridge made of limes. The river was famous, and it was well known by the Romans that were conquering our territory after they killed Viriato. Yeah, but the river was known, it's not at these days, but everyone who crossed it basically would forget everything, would like lose their minds. Lose their memory, not lose their mind. And like the general of the troops said, yeah, that's all bullshit and you can just cross it. So we started telling them, their troops, like, yeah, that's a lie, don't worry, you can cross it. But their troops are like, nah bro, we are not trying, I don't want to forget about things. So basically what the general did, he went up on his horse, he crossed the river to the other side, and he just started shouting the names of its armies, people, or his generals or his soldiers or something like that. Just started calling them one by one. And so they were like, okay, he didn't lose his memory, and just cross it. And now there's actually like a statue on one side of the river of the general on top of his horse, and on the other side there's like images, there's like statues of the soldiers, like just like waiting there. I at least have not forgotten my memory, and I've crossed the rivers quite a few times. Number 3 is sea. As you can probably see, Portugal like has loads of traditions with the sea and the ocean, and like most of our story is based around and our big things that we did are based around the ocean and the trips we did. There's like loads and loads of talk, but like the biggest achievements probably, finding the maritime way to India. So no one has ever done that. That's like one of the things that you talk the most in history classes in Portugal. But other than that, we were also responsible for finding Brazil, and the way we found Brazil was actually by accident. It was, at the time, people were trying to find the maritime way to India, and they just got it wrong and just went to the other side because they were like going to Africa. So going to Africa, they actually went to Brazil. And also, of course, to finalize it, you also have Fernão Magalhães, who managed to do a 360 no-scope around the world. Yeah, he was the first person to travel around the world on a boat on the sea. And I mean, but like these stories, there are so many that I could talk about, like famous captains and so on. But if you're interested, really search about that, because there's loads of information on the internet. And if you want to ask something, you can always ask on the comments. I'll reply to you. So number 2, I want to talk about the islands of Azores and Madeira. So Portugal has 2 islands. Most of you know Madeira because it was the island that Cristiano Ronaldo came from, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, and each island has a certain number of islands inside it. So it's not an island, it's an, I don't know how you, let me search how you say it. Okay, apparently you say archipelago. So it's a collective joint. So apparently you say archipelago, which is like a group of islands. Madeira has 3 islands and the Azores have 9 islands. So one thing or two about those islands, they're actually volcanic islands. They came out from the eruptions of the volcans. And it is said sometimes like that Atlantis is actually very near the Azores, and there are people who actually believe that Azores are the Atlantis, but like part of it is just like submerged, but it's like it's more or less in there. So that's actually cool. And in like even in Madeira and in Azores, they actually have like very different accents from Portugal. Like if you're someone who's trying to learn Portuguese and you go to Azores or you go to Madeira, Jesus Christ, you're going to feel like there are some islands in Azores that are like have a very thick accent. There are some who don't even have an accent, but in Madeira, like there are like most people, they have like a very big accent, and they have like it's very hard to understand, and even for us Portuguese people. Another thing is that in Portugal we have a supermarket that's called Continente, which literally means continent. And for people in islands, you can probably see that's pretty much confusing, because you said like, oh yeah, I just went to the continent to get some cabbage, and like you just went to like continental Portugal. So yeah, in order to avoid confusion, people in the islands call that supermarket by other name, which is modelo, which translates to model, by the way. So that's a little fun fact for you about the islands. So the last topic I want to talk about Portugal is our food. Portugal is like so well known about food, and like people come to our country to taste our food and our gastronomy. And I mean, I can see why. I've been in England for like 3 or 4 months now, and I'm sorry English people, I'm really sorry, but the gastronomy here is just quite bad. Like probably is because maybe it's not that bad, but my expectations are just very high with Portugal. We have a diet that's a lot based on fish, especially cod. We have the famous bacalhau, as you English people say, bacalhau. So yeah, like we have so many recipes for cod. Like we have cod this way and cod that way, and cod fried and baked cod, and so many ways of like cooking cod with creams and blah 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 blah. We have that. We also have francesinhas, which are like the most famous thing from the north part of Portugal and from the city that I live in, Porto, which is basically like cheese on bread, and then it has like tons of meat inside it, which is like sausage, I don't know, cow meat, well, things like that. We also have in Porto the tradition of sardines, and also many other types of fish, but sardines are very common. Fishermen always get them, and like we have like baked sardines and grilled sardines and so on and so forth. And it's so good actually. There are like some dishes that are at first like they are very like strong, like in terms of flavor, and like people especially kids in Portugal at first don't usually like it unless you're like really into like strong flavors. But then you just like, it's just part of your country, so you just grow into it and you just start liking it. At first, like I didn't like it much, but now I really miss sardines and I really miss codfish. And one last thing about our gastronomy is that we love desserts. We have so many types of like sweets and cakes, and we even have like a penis-shaped cake. Yeah, it's true. I'm sorry for all the vegetarians out there. Portugal has many meat-based and fish-based recipes. And that basically wraps it up. That was 10 facts about Portugal. If you knew all of them, well, congrats, you're really master of Portugal. If you didn't, well, now you know. And I really hope that you find it interesting, and I really hope that you do some investigation, because believe me, you'll find some of the things that are said are very interesting, and they are very, very like nice to explore and to know more about, because I'm not the best person to explain all of this, because I'm used to explain this in Portuguese, and when I talk in English, just like, oh, I'm lacking vocabulary. Nevertheless, I hope that I did my best, and I hope that you understood everything. If not, just leave me a comment, just tell me what you want to know more, and I'll gladly explain it to you. So yeah, I really hope that you liked the video, and I'll see you next time. See ya.